So now that you have an understanding of what vector data is, let's talk about what types of analysis we can do with it. These are the many operations you can do with vector data. This is far from exhaustive, but it should get you to the point where you understand much of the capabilities of vector data. Now let's go over these individually. First, at its most basic, vector data in a GIS can find the union of two data sets. This is where we are combining everything into one data set with another data set into one composite layer. Next, the intersect is a much more common use in GIS than the union. This finds where two layers have overlap. If you think of this as a Venn diagram, this is the middle part where the two circles overlapped. In ArcGIS, you can get to versions of this operation by either using the intersect tool, which creates a new data set, or select by location, which just selects the entities that intersect without making a new layer. Next, we have buffer. This is a proximity tool which creates a polygon at a specified distance around either points, lines, or polygons. Often the buffer layer is used in combination with the intersect tool to identify how close two layers or entities are to each other. Say you want to find out whether two cities are within 100 miles of each other. You can create a buffer and then see if their buffers overlap. Next is clip. This is what I call the cookie cutter tool. Here, the input layer is your dough, your clip layer is your cookie cutter, and your output is your cookie. Your clip layer always needs to be a polygon, aka a cookie cutter can't be a line. You're really just making weird cookies if that's the case. But your input layer, on the other hand, can be anything, points, lines, or polygons. So when do I use this? I use this when my data set is larger than the area I'm mapping. For instance, if I want to make a map of all the Lane County roads, but I only have a data set for all of Oregon, I might want to clip that down to just the roads in Lane County. Lane County then would become my clip layer, and all the roads are my input layer. This actually happens a lot with things like roads and rivers, because you would not believe how many roads and how many rivers there are. These take a long time to render in GIS, and by clipping them down to a more manageable size, it's less taxing on your computer. The erase is the opposite of a clip. Basically, you want to use this when you want the output to be the excess dough, not the cookie. That's the best part anyway. When do I use this? I use this because inevitably I seem to download data sets that don't include the Great Lakes. So I want to cut out the lake and make that area empty. So I use the erase tool in that case. My Great Lakes are the erase layer, and the rest of my data set are the input layer. Next, we have split. Split is a fairly simple operation. It splits up your data set. Again, that can be points, lines, or polygons as your input layer based on a polygon split layer. I don't use this much, but I might use it when I add something like roads and I want to separate out layers for each county, for instance. My counties would be my split layer, and my roads would be my input layer. If I worked, say, at the state of Oregon, that type of operation might be useful for giving all of the county managers just data from their own county. But again, I haven't used this much. Next, we have merge and append. In ArcGIS, these are two different tools, and I'll explain the differences. But let me first start with their similarities. These two operations are adding two data sets together. Say you have all of the counties in Oregon and all of the counties in Washington, and you want just one data set of all of the counties in both Oregon and Washington. You'd use one of these two operations. Now let's talk about the differences between these two operations. In ArcGIS, the merge tool creates a brand new data set. The append tool just adds one data set to an existing data set. If we think of this in terms of the table of contents, that's the list of your layers on the left-hand side in ArcGIS. If we only had 2 layers to begin with, say in this instance, the Western United States as one layer and the Eastern United States as another layer, with the merge tool, we'd have a third data set of the whole US. While with the append tool, we just have 2 data sets in the end, one with, say, the Eastern United States added to the Western United States. Finally, we have dissolve. This operation aggregates features based on a specified attribute. In the case of the graphic here, the attribute is 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can see that the internal lines have been removed in the result to create larger areas of 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's go through an example. If we want to dissolve by state name here, so you can see that column in our attribute table, we can see that there's several rows with Connecticut, several with Delaware, one with District of Columbia, aka Washington, D.C., and several with Maine. What the dissolve tool will do is give us just one row per state, aka we're dissolving away the county boundaries to just get whole states. But what happens to the other fields besides state name? Things like area, object ID, and name. We will only get one row per state. So what goes in those columns? As the GIS user, we get to tell the GIS what to do with those fields. Do we want the sum of all of the area, for instance? Or maybe we want the average, which would give us the average size of all the counties in that state. We can get these summary statistics as long as we tell the GIS that we want them. When it comes to nominal data types like county name, we can either ignore it, not add it into the final data set, or we can do things like get the first county name in the alphabet or the last county name in the alphabet to add to our data set, or maybe just a count of all of the different names, which would give us the number of counties per state. Here's what that looks like in ArcGIS. Here I decided to use the sum summary statistic for the area field. And I decided I didn't need anything from the original county name field, so I just left that out of the output. Finally, how do you find these? Well, you will explore this much more in your labs, but I thought I would give you a quick idea of where these tools are found. You open up the tools under the Analysis tab. You can search within the tools, which I'll be honest is what I do most of the time, but you can also find many of the tools I talked about today under the Analysis toolbox or the Data Management toolbox. And just a reminder that ArcGIS help pages are actually incredibly helpful and have diagrams and explanations which can explain what each tool is and does. While your GEs are definitely there to help you during labs, I also want to encourage you to do your due diligence and try to use the help pages as much as possible before asking for help. This is mostly because I want to help you to explore these pages first to really see whether you are understanding the tools and operations before immediately asking for help. That being said, we're always here to help you, so don't be nervous to ask. I just want to make sure you know that there's tons of stuff out there on the Esri help pages. I still rely on these when I can't remember the difference between, say, a merge and append, or what types of buffers there are, or how they're calculated. I've been doing GIS for 15 years, and I still need to look things up. So I just suggest using the help. It's not a shameful thing. I use it extensively too.